Thanks, Kendra. Hey all, my name is Rain Garant. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the Assistant Director of Intercultural Life and the Campus LGBTQ Plus Advisor at Knox College. I feel really grateful to have gotten connected with Kendra through some other work we've done together, and then also with all the great folks at City Year. It's been really wonderful getting to talk with all of them. I've gotten to work with Sailor a little bit more closely because we're also working on some really great professional development opportunities that City Year has to offer some of our intercultural life peer educators. So, just to let you all know that there are tons of great ways that you can get and then stay connected with City Year. I am going to pass it off to Sailor and Vaughn now to tell you all a little bit about them and what they do.
Awesome, and we do also have Vaughn from the Peace Corps here too. So it's both of our programs that are being highlighted, and I'll let him kind of introduce himself after myself. But a lot of you probably who know me, I'm Sailor. For those that don't know me, I'm Sailor. I use them pronouns, and I'm a recruiter with City Year, and I've been lucky to kind of partner with the Career Center on a couple different events. And also this is kind of the first time that we're bringing intercultural life in to have a more, I think, nuanced dialogue about not just service, but like how does identity and service, or like, navigating your identity and your values as you job search impact kind of your path as you go on to find that next step for yourself. So in terms of what City Year is, we're a nonprofit and an education focused AmeriCorps program that works with students who could be off track in school or fall off track without some additional support. And so as tutors and mentors to students, we try to build relationships with students to provide that kind of additional foundation as they go throughout their year. But our core members will be able to tell you more from kind of that firsthand perspective, what service looks like. So I'm excited to hear from them in a little bit, and I'll pass it to Vaughn to introduce himself and the Peace Corps.
Thank you, Sailor. My name's Vaughn. I am a recruiter with the Peace Corps, specifically with kind of Central Illinois. And so I live in Peoria, and I kind of work with universities, organizations, individuals in the Central Illinois area. Similar to what Sailor was saying, the Peace Corps is a service organization that kind of works globally in 6 different sectors or programs: education, health, community and economic development, youth development, agriculture, and environment. And so it's a 2-year service opportunity spent abroad, working in a variety of projects, and we'll talk more specifically about what that can look like from a Knox alumni who's done it. But it's also similarly like AmeriCorps, which is through the U.S. government. Peace Corps is through the federal government as well.
Excellent. And now who you all have been waiting to hear from our panelists. I'd love to pass the mic to our panelists to share a little brief introduction, your name, pronouns, where you're serving, or maybe where you served, if you have already completed your service, and what drew you to the service program that you did. And actually, since you're all alumni, feel free to share what you studied at Knox. Let's start with Natasha, if you don't mind.
Great, can you hear me? Cool, just wanted to make sure. Okay, I'm Natasha. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Let me remember everything I have to say. At Knox, I majored in American Studies and minored in Educational Policy. And the reason that I was interested in City Year were kind of like, it combined 2 things I really wanted to do. Minoring in educational policy, I just really wanted to better understand the US education system, and like what better way to like actually go work in a classroom. But while I was at Knox, I also did a ton of like service, community service, anything helping people out was my thing. And so I really wanted to like, be able to like do service after Knox. And so City Year, let me do both of those things.
So I'm Neha, pronoun she, her, hers. I also serve. I'm currently serving in City Year as a first-year AmeriCorps member. I graduated back in 2020 during the start of the pandemic. I was a bio major, double minored in biochem and health studies. And so for me, when I was looking for something to do while taking a couple of gap years before pursuing a career in healthcare, I was thinking about something with service. I knew that that was really important to me. And at the same time, I also wanted to give back to like CPS just because I was a CPS student growing up. I was born and raised in Chicago. So I was looking for an opportunity to do that, to work with kids because I want to be a pediatrician someday. So that's how I got to learn about City Year and pursued it.
Okay, I guess I can go next. My name is Domanique Rahman. I graduated in 2019. He, him, his pronouns. I majored in anthropology and sociology, and I had a minor in Africana studies and international development. It's really long. I hate writing it. So I did Peace Corps. And basically Peace Corps is similar to AmeriCorps, but it's like international. You go to a different country and you volunteer. And what really got me motivated to joining Peace Corps is one, my studies, and then two, Knox is really big on study abroad. I went abroad once every year while I was in school. So I was just so excited to do it. And I'm like, when I was thinking about what I was going to do after graduating, Peace Corps only made sense. So, yeah.
Well, I am not a Knox alumni, but I am super jealous of all the opportunities that you all have there. When you think about the service that you've been doing or that you did, what were some things that were challenging about that process, and what were some things that were fulfilling?
I can go ahead and answer. So when I think about being fulfilling, I think about the things that I reaped from my experiences. So I guess I can start off with my approach. My approach was always to be slow to speak and quick to listen. And by doing that, I was able to learn so many different things. So, I may want to do this project and I may go to the wrong person if I'm really quick to speak. But just by sitting back and like learning my environment, I'll find someone else in my work environment who also wants to do that project. And I think just being able to see what works and who I can work with certain things was definitely very fulfilling. And being in like those events and seeing them be completed was definitely very fulfilling. In regards to my challenges, I think I had a different challenge. I think I blended in too much because I served in Southern Africa, or a country called Botswana. And that wasn't going to Peace Corps. That wasn't my first time being there. I studied abroad there twice. I did an internship there, and I had learned the language a bit. So I kind of like knew the language a little bit, and like also I kind of looked like the people there. So like when I'm there for Peace Corps, I found myself having to be more American instead of like trying to speak, the language and stuff. Because if I speak the language, because I can do it somewhat well, they'll think I'm just from there. So I had to embrace my Americanness. So that was a kind of challenge for me.
Feel free to answer either Natasha or Neha, or either, whoever feels comfortable.
Okay, I can go. Sorry, I have like extreme fear of starting talking and then someone else starts talking and then it's like really awkward. Like I'll speak last if I can like not have that happen to me. But yeah, I think like kind of the reason I like really wanted to pursue City Year was definitely I did just like I wanted to like be able to do service and something like meaningful, but something that like didn't, how do I word this? Something that like made like a positive impact. Okay, we use the word impact a lot at City Year, so I'm taking that. But kind of like what Domanique said about, listening to the people who you're serving and not just like going in and saying like, oh, I know everything, I know how to do this, like not going in with a bunch of assumptions, because I think on the challenges end, I think a lot of assumptions I had about, you know, like what my students were going to be like, what working in a school was going to be like, have definitely been like challenged this year, especially working virtually. So yeah, definitely like listening and learning. And I think a big thing too is just, and obviously a normal year we wouldn't be virtual, but I think just being like really flexible and being really like almost creative in what we get to do and how we get to like best serve our students, because you got to keep them engaged online somehow. But yeah, I think definitely just like kind of the reason I wanted to do it was just to like, yeah, to help people and to help my students.
Yeah, and I think Natasha kind of really pulled in the point of, with this year being the pandemic going on, how it's changed all of our lives in, you know, countless different ways. Our students also, you know, going from learning in the classroom to learning at home in different environments and in different neighborhoods and having different, you know, lives. That was one of the challenges of learning, you know, how do we keep them engaged, but at the same time, you know, how do we keep up with their social and emotional learning? How do we keep them, you know, try to keep them on the positive side when even the world may be turning in a place where we don't necessarily know? How do we not necessarily combat that, but instead, how do we process that and help them process through it, and help them get through this as strongly as they can? So it was definitely a learning curve for all of us, I guess, you know, since we were learning as we went too, as we were all processing through that. But it was definitely fulfilling just to, you know, be able to see them every morning. It's like they'll say like, Miss Motwani, you know, like I just learned about this today. It's just little moments like that that honestly just fill up your heart so much. And yeah, so you get those little cute moments and it's really fulfilling, and just to see them smile and to see them, you know, talk about something that happened over the weekend or something that they're super happy about and they're willing to share with you and with the class.
Excellent. I think you're speaking to kind of like the relationship building that can go into like any kind of work that's service oriented, but especially building relationships with young people. So excellent. And I'd love to ask, what's one thing that you wish you'd have known before serving? And can we hear from Neha and then Dominique?
So I guess for me, one thing I wished I would have known is just, I didn't know going in what my day-to-day would be like, what would necessarily be my tasks or what would my role entail in the classroom, because there's high schools and then there's elementary schools and your role varies depending where you're placed at. So if you're in an elementary school, you're with one teacher the whole day, versus at a high school, you may be with one teacher or multiple teachers, and there's a bunch of students as the periods keep changing. So I wish I kind of would have known like the difference between being at a high school and being in like an elementary school, and just knowing like what kind of different relationships would I be forming then, depending on how many students I'm seeing a day.
I guess something that I wish I would have known is a saying that they'll tell you a lot if you ever join Peace Corps. Something that they always told us was to lower your expectations. And that was really important for me because I planned everything. Like I applied to the place where I knew how everything was gonna be. And so I had all these expectations, but still when I got there, different things happened. I'm like, oh, I know the language, but little did I know where I got placed, it was a different dialect. So I still had to change how I spoke. So I think I wish I would have kind of had that advice of just like lowering my expectations, because sometimes we shoot high, and if you shoot low, you'll always get better than what you want. You know?
No, it's true. And I think you both speak really well to the extent to which you don't really know what you're getting into until you're there, right? Until you live through that experience. I'm curious to Natasha and Neha, having done your service or in your service, what's a misconception that you had that was kind of changed in through your process?
So one misconception, and this kind of feeds into something I wish I'd known, because I think it would have calmed a lot of like the anxiety I had. Like I don't know, I was really nervous about like being the only city year in a classroom and like being in charge of students and like being in charge of their learning, because I was like, I don't know how to do that. Like, and city year does a lot of like, we call them learning and development days, and basically they're just our training days where we like do sessions on like how do you lead out on a small group with students, and you know, how do you do like topic, like subject specific, you know, stuff with your students. And so that really prepared me. But I think a huge thing, like I was just really scared that like all day I was going to be like alone in this classroom, kind of being confused and not knowing what I was doing. But city year is like really, really big on like the team dynamic. So like you and probably 6 or 7 other people all are all at the school, we're all city years, and you're in your own classrooms, but like we have morning meetings and we also have end of the day meetings where we like start the day together and then we can debrief the day together. In my team, we have like a group chat that we just text each other all day because, you know, lots of stuff happens in our classrooms. But really just like we do so much team building and so much team bonding. My team has played so many games of Among Us. It's ridiculous. I always lose when I'm playing with my students though. But I don't know, I think if I'd known that, I would have been a lot less nervous about like going into my classroom space. So definitely something I kind of wish I'd known, but it obviously worked out really well.
Yeah, I definitely feel Natasha had similar misconceptions that I had too. Going in, I think 2 of my biggest misconceptions were, I thought I would be alone in the classroom. Like at some point, like my partner teacher would be doing working with their own students, and I would be working with a set of my own, or at some point. And I didn't realize that we would all be still like a team at one school. And so having that team, even though like we're in different classrooms, it's still amazing, because during lunchtime we might host events with our students, and so that's where we get to see all of these students from all of these classes come together, and we'll be playing like Pictionary or Among Us or all of these games. But also at the same time, it's like having that time to build that team, so it's you're not alone in this process. You also have other people there to like help you give advice, or to be your support system and to cheer you on as you do this amazing job. And, you know, having that partner teacher and having that relationship has been amazing too. So I guess I thought of it being more independent, but it's turned out to be a really teamwork kind of job, which I really enjoy.
Thanks so much, y'all. So I want to transition us to begin talking a little bit more about the ways that specifically identity shows up in our experiences when we are looking for, and then in the middle of jobs, right? So I want to preface this to our room as a whole by kind of sharing that we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Our identities and the ways that we perceive ourselves, the way that we see ourselves, the way that we see others, and the way that others see us all really matters in the way that we feel connected and the way that we feel a fit in our work environment, right? So I have a couple of questions for our panelists that are going to help shed some light on the different ways that you might consider your own relationship with your identity in your job search, and then also what it will feel like when you have a potential good fit or a potential bad fit in a work environment. Right. So my first question, I want to pass this one over to Domanique. Would you be willing to share how your identity has interplayed with your service?
Yes, so I think a big way my identity played into my services, it was interesting because colonialism, if just to be frank. In my experience, a lot of places around the world, or at least in the places I've been, they associate being American with white because that's what they see in a lot of movies and whatnot. And it's just what they believe. So for us, we have the understanding that, like, you know, there's race and, like, you know, this race is this and this is that. But for them, race isn't really a thing. It's just, oh, like, no, American means white. And the funny thing is, like, I blended in well. People would think I was from the capital, but then when they would learn, like when I would tell them or when someone else would tell them that I was from the US, then it's like, oh, this guy is like, yeah, no, he's white. And I'm like, wait, what? And that was kind of hard to like fathom. And I'm like, no, especially I was mainly placed in a school. And I'm like, no, these students aren't gonna. So I don't know if you all have ever like done those identity bills at Knox. I remember doing them a lot, but I know that that's something that I kind of tried to introduce into the school when we were teaching about like, like self-empowerment, because knowing who you are and those identities that you hold is a part of self-empowerment. Because if you're going to be proud of yourself, you need to know, who am I? So.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I feel like that's a really illuminating layer that adds on to what you shared earlier today. Thanks. The next question I want to ask, and this one I'll direct it first to Neha and then to Natasha. I'm wondering, what does it feel like to have your identities fully valued by your workplace? And then also, what does it feel like when a workplace falls short of that expectation?
Yeah, so definitely in City Year, I guess the one thing that drew me to City Year early on was just the fact that my identity would always be considered an asset. That who I am, my background, where I grew up, what race, what ethnicity, all of that could be used into something that would be a purposeful, meaningful purpose. It's not something I had to hide or to simulate or to change, which was really what I enjoyed. And there's a lot of affinity groups that we have in City Year where you can join. Like we have a Asian Pacific group, we have a Black and the Latinx group. We have all of these groups where you can have those conversations with others, about struggles that you've had in the past, depending on what environments you lived in, or other past experiences that you share on, where things or experiences may have not necessarily favored or necessarily had reflected on your identity in a very positive way. And so having that community, being able to have that community has been amazing. Being able to make friends in that community has been tremendously helpful, and it's amazing to see, the amount of all of us who are taking our identities and putting them into good use in order to create the service. I guess in terms of workplace challenges, I guess I don't necessarily have anything to say in terms of the workplace, but in the past, like growing up and such, people have judged me for my identity. People have judged me for my skin color. People have judged me for all of those things. And it's great to finally be in a place where I don't feel like that every single day.
Yeah, and I think kind of to echo that, something that's also really great about City Year is that we're on a team, and then we have a team leader who it doesn't work in one of the classrooms in our school, but like they're like our direct like point of contact. Like they kind of schedule everything that our team does, but we also we get to know them really well. They help us out whenever we need anything. And then we also have impact managers, which are basically just a step higher than the team leader to keep it simple. And every week I meet with one of them. So kind of alternating, one week I'll meet with my team leader, and the next week I'll meet with my impact manager. And they just, they schedule one-on-ones to, just keep up with us, make sure, to hear about how we're doing, how our work is going, but also like how our personal lives are going. And that was those were relationships that were very intentional. Like from the very beginning of service, they were like, we're going to have these meetings. Like, we want to connect with you as people. And we also want to make sure that if anything comes up, we are here to support you. And so, yeah, I definitely agree. I do feel like my identity is valued at City Year. So I haven't had too many problems with that, but I have 2020 was a year for all of us, and so if things came up, if anything comes up, even if it's in my personal life or something happens in the classroom, I can go to my manager or my team leader and say like, hey, I want to have a conversation about this, and they're gonna like help me in whatever way I need. And that's definitely not something I've had with like past like supervisors or bosses at like jobs or internships. And so, yeah, I definitely really value that, just because I feel really like, yeah, supported.
Thank you both. Very grateful to hear that you have both had positive experiences. So for my last question, I'm wondering what advice you all would give to someone who has similar identities or similar values to you all, who is just now starting their job search process. So why don't I throw it back to Natasha and then Domanique.
Yeah, so I had an internship one time that I actually ended up quitting because the values of that company and then my own values were like so drastically different. And so I'm really lucky because City Year, you know, my values do align with what City Year believes. And I mean, a lot of those values are just kind of how I feel about service and how I feel about like helping my community. But so I think a big thing was that because of my past experiences, when I was, well, I guess when I was actually accepted into City Year, I actually talked to other Knox alums who, well, okay, not other, I guess I wasn't an alum yet, but I talked to Knox alums who had done the City Year program because I really wanted to know what their experiences were and how, you know, they had felt about just being at City Year in general. And so that was a really big kind of factor in deciding that I wanted to do City Year, because I pretty much, I knew I'd feel comfortable at City Year. So I think that's really important. And like, I think it's incredibly cliche, or I always thought it was cliche to like in an interview, if you have like a question at the end of the interview and you ask, you know, what's the culture of this company? You know, I always thought that was really cliche, but I think it is really important. And like City Year does a really great job of like, pretty much like you can go on their website and their values and like what they kind of support are right there. But yeah, I think it's really important. And so definitely like ask those questions, or like, yeah, talk to people who've worked at the organization or, you know, been there as well.
And just to kind of follow up on Natasha, I agree. Research is a big thing. And there's so many different ways you can do your research, whether it's, again, reaching out to alumni, going on the job website. If you're going into a specific place, maybe you're looking up like what's around in the area on Google Maps, or maybe you're looking up YouTube videos of people's experience and stuff. There's just multiple ways that you can like go about doing your research. I do think one of the most powerful ways though you can do is reach out to alum from your school if there are some, because one, the culture of Knox has been the same for like a long time, a very long time. So you can reach out to people who graduated in like the 80s and you probably still had similar experiences. But because of that, you can still reach out to these people and they can tell you based on like a Knox experience, how they experienced that organization. So I do think that it's important to do that. And then I think also being aware of like the world that we live in is good, and accepting it. Because sometimes if we're naive to some of the things that are going on, you may be shocked when something happens or when something continues to happen. So it's just being open and aware and honest with yourself about what's around you and what you'll be going into. So,
Yeah, thank you both. I had like a little short list of things that I thought would be also helpful pieces of advice, and y'all nailed almost all of them. The one last thing I would say is that as current Knox students, you all also have Kendra and the other folks at Career Services at your disposal, and that can be a really great way to get connected to existing alumni that are in jobs or in fields that you're interested in, and then also to learn more about how to research institutions and where to find values and things like that. So I think with that, we're ready to turn it over to a Q&A from our folks in the audience.
Absolutely, yeah. It's actually kind of a beautiful transition to have one of the last questions be talk to Knox alumni about, you know, what you're considering, because we happen to have 3 amazing Knox alumni here that have done, you know, programs that folks might be interested in. So yeah, this is definitely time to just open it up for any questions that might be out there. And actually, I noticed, Naya, I'm sorry, we never gave you space to introduce yourself. You've been sitting here this whole time, patiently listening. Did you also want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Naya. I'm a sophomore, and I actually go to University of Chicago, but I'm here because I'm interning with City Year. So yeah. Oh, my pronouns are she, hers.
Awesome. Thank you, Naya. Cool. If we don't have any questions, that's fine. Vaughn and I can kind of talk a little bit about next steps for anybody that's interested in our programs, and that's how we'll close. So just last call for some questions.
If no one has a question, I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious how you all see City Year and Peace Corps playing into, because they're both temporary jobs, right? No one does either one forever. And so I'm curious how you see City Year and Peace Corps fitting into your overall plans.
I could start. I saw City Year as like a temporary take a year of my life, try to figure out what I want to do, even though we're in a pandemic, type of thing. But I guess I liked serving at City Year so much that I actually applied to be a returning AmeriCorps member. So I'm going to be serving with City Year's civic engagement team for the next school year. So I'm really excited to do that. Definitely did not expect to like reapply and like go to a new team and do City Year again for a year. But I'm just really excited because it's going to be totally different. It's kind of based in like planning the large scale service projects that City Year does. And I got to do some of that when I was at Knox. And so I think a lot of just, kind of like event planning, coordinating, still getting to do service next year. I'm sure that'll help me in whatever I choose to do after that. But yeah, I'm really excited that City Year kind of opened up that opportunity for me.
And I guess I'll add to that. So definitely for me, looking at this experience, I wanted to be able to experience being part of a population or interacting with a population that one day I would like to take care of. And so that was a reason for me in order to want to be in this service in the first place. And that led me to actually reapply also as a returning ACM. So I will be a team leader next year. But the skills, honestly, like even as these are temporary roles, the skills that you learn in these kinds of jobs, you can apply anywhere, like public speaking, communication, project management. All these skills are going to be assets no matter where you go, whether it's, going on to some grad school, whether it's going on to another job or to doing another service organization or a nonprofit someday. Like all these skills are applicable no matter where you go.
I can go. I guess I was hit with a lot, especially cultural shock coming back my senior year. So I kind of had grad school in mind, but I didn't know how that process looked at all. And I always had Peace Corps in the back of my mind, so it just made sense for me to do Peace Corps. And then a lot of the AmeriCorps and Peace Corps programs, they offer opportunities for financial aid for when you go off to do grad school. So that was also a benefit with Peace Corps. They have the Paul D. Coverdell Fellows Program, and that would allow me to take that time to think about, okay, do I actually want to go to grad school? And then if I do want to go, what do I want to study? And then finishing that 2 years, I would have had those thoughts in mind. And then I would have been able to apply to a program that was best suited for me. So.
Excellent. And I actually also have a question. This is, Naya, actually something that we had talked about was, and you can maybe say it better than I, but, not being just a transplant in the space where you're serving. And if you could just maybe share kind of, I guess, what your reaction is to that, like in your service, how are you making some of the work that you do really feel rooted? And like building, is it, building relationships? Is it building sustainable projects? Like, how do you compensate for maybe the duration of service with how you show up when you're there? Does that kind of get to one of the questions we talked about, Naya? Yeah, awesome. It can be kind of a tough question, so it's okay if folks, it's a question that you didn't prepare to answer, so that's okay if we want to move on to the next thing.
Can you ask it one more time, and then I'll give you an answer.
Absolutely. How do you, in terms of when you're serving, how do you make your service meaningful and sustainable, given that you're only there for a certain duration of time?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for me, I would just go back to listening and being slow to speak and quick to listen. Because for me, what that allowed to happen is people would come talking to me and conversations would begin, and I would hear what they're interested in. And what I learned is that if I only pursue things that I was interested in and nobody else is interested in those, when I leave, they're gonna stop. But if I found a teacher and students who love what I was doing, and I can get them and we can build it together, and I can help them keep it going, then ideally it'll keep going after I'm gone. So just finding out what they wanted to do instead of what I wanted to do. I think that definitely is a way.
Yeah, okay. I think after you reworded it, I understood the question a little bit better. Yeah, I think a big thing with City Year is that you live in the community that you serve. And so my really big thing, even before I served at City Year, one reason I got involved in community service at Knox is because I don't ever want to live in a place and not give back to that place that I live. And so, I don't live that far away from the school that I'm teaching at. I've never been there because we're in a pandemic, but the feeling is still there. I live in the same community as the students I see every day in class. And I think really just, I'm only going to know these students for a year, but one thing that I really focus on is that I really want my students to believe in themselves and to know that they can do it and to know that they can thrive in school. And so I was doing a one-on-one session with a student yesterday and we got something done and she was so excited that she had finished it. She was like, my grade's going to be so good. And I was like, yes, it is, girlfriend. But I want her to take that energy into the classroom next year, even when I'm not there. So, I think if I can do that, then my time at City Year it's been well spent.
Yeah, definitely. And to add to that, when it comes to being in the classroom and such, and being with these students, some of the things that our team decided to emphasize or to make sure that we got across and we taught our students was skills that they're going to use not only in these 4 years of high school, but beyond that, whether it be college or a job or wherever at some point. So time management, ways to process, mental health, ways to do meditation, relaxation, all of those things we made an emphasis to teach, whether it was during our lunch activities or after school. Even though it was in a virtual setting, we had lots of students who always come and attend, and just teach them ways to deal with stress, ways to learn how to manage their time, plan, all of those skills that are going to help them not only with their freshman year of high school, but then beyond that as well.
Excellent. So I'm hearing a lot about like community buy-in and building relationships and just personal development that will kind of extend beyond the classroom and beyond that year, and how it kind of becomes something that maybe something learns about themselves as they're moving through school. And my apologies if the question was confusing. Thanks for clarifying so you could answer it. Excellent. If there are no other questions out there, we can use kind of the last couple minutes here just to close out with some information about next steps and how to get in contact with us, at least recruiters, about the programs. Okay, cool. Vaughn, do you want to go first? Just, kind of sharing what it would look like to apply to the Peace Corps and yeah, next steps that anybody should be aware of.
Sure. Anyone interested in applying to Peace Corps would go to Peace Corps, PCORPS.gov. And it's actually kind of special now. It's a little different because of COVID. And so normally it would say, it would be a position title for a specific country and a job, something like health extension volunteer in Zambia. You would apply to that specific position. After a little bit after you apply, you'll complete a health history form. There's an interview after you submit. After that's checked over, there's an interview due with a placement officer. If selected, you will go through a legal and a medical check or clearance, and then you would go off to your country to do your 2 years of service. And so that whole process can take typically somewhere between 6 to 8 months to go through. What the advice that I tend to give is not to apply more than a year in advance for the time that you are hoping to go and serve, but no less than 6 months. And if you go to the website, you will see the different opportunities abroad. Now it does not have the specific country, it'll just have a region. So it'll say Health Volunteer Africa or Environment Volunteer Central America. That will likely change, honestly, soon, but it just depends. As we get closer and closer to sending volunteers back in the service, we'll update and it'll get more specific.
Excellent, thanks, Vaughn. And I'll just close this out. So since you're actually already familiar with this process, this is probably going to be repeat information to you, but our program has a number of deadlines associated with the application process. The next application deadline is April 16th. And all we ask for is a resume, 4 essay responses to some questions that we have about your approach to service, your motivation, and then 1 reference. And that reference can be somebody that's seen you working with young people. It can also be somebody that just generally has an awareness of your strengths and your growth areas. They'll fill out an online form for us to consider. And then after conducting your interview, which is usually around 45 minutes, we'll give you a hiring decision. And we'll ask for your decision back on that offer, usually about 2 weeks after we get in contact with you about the offer. So that's a little bit about our process, but the easiest way just to get a hold of me is actually by completing this form in the chat that I'll just drop here. Actually, I guess this is really just, Libby, this is for you. Because Kat, you've already applied to the program. If this is something that you want to consider, the easiest way to get in contact is just fill out the form, and then I'll follow up with you to say, thanks for attending the event. It was great, having you there, and let's connect to answer any, questions in particular that you might have, or talk more about kind of what you're hoping to do for the future. So, yeah, thank you for being here, Libby. So excellent. With that, we'll conclude the panel. Just want to say excellent job to our panelists. Really, thank you so much for sharing, not only your perspective from your time in service, but also your perspective on just navigating, what it's like to find an opportunity that's going to be meaningful and aligned with you, and also maybe how to reconcile the job search process, which can be it can be challenging, and yeah. So thank you very much for being here and for sharing a little bit about your experience today. Kendra or Rain, did you want to share any closing information for folks about like the Career Center or anything that you have on deck?
Yes, thank you. I just also want to thank all of you for being on as part of this. And as Rain touched on earlier, you're welcome to, reach out to our office at any time, me directly or anyone else in our office. You can make appointments via handshake. If you don't want to do it that, just contact me directly. And we can help you, navigate either your applications to City or Peace Corps, or, even just helping you find, companies that align with your identity and what you believe in, morally, and whatever it is, we can help you find those. We do have some resources online, but they're not extensive compared to what we can help you find. So yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. It was really great to hear your stories and your perspectives. I really appreciate it. I'm also happy to chat if folks are interested in learning more about the ways that identities show up in job searches, if you want to have a very specific conversation about that. But I would definitely recommend our Career Services Office for all of your career searching and values in the workplace needs. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Excellent. Take care, everybody. We can stop the recording and sign off.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.